The room was loud with laughter that didn't include him. Someone had just spilled coffee near the reception desk, and before the sound of the cup hitting the floor faded, a voice cut through the noise. "Hey, clean that, now." He was already moving before the sentence ended. On his knees, paper towels pressed into the carpet, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the stain as if it were the only thing that mattered in the world. A man in a tailored suit stepped over him without slowing down. Another laughed. Someone whispered, "That's his job," like it explained everything. No one asked his name. To them, he was just the caretaker, the quiet one. The man who appeared before the building woke up and stayed long after it slept. His name was Daniel, and for most of his life, he had learned that being invisible was safer than being seen. Years earlier, he hadn't imagined this would be his ending. He had plans once, small ones, honest ones, a steady job, a place to belong, a reason to feel useful. But life has a way of narrowing your options without asking permission. When his mother fell ill, everything else slowly disappeared. The savings, the apartment, the future he had sketched in his head but never written down. By the time she passed, Daniel was already behind. No degree, no network, just hands that knew how to work and a silence that followed him everywhere. The building hired him because he didn't ask questions. Night shifts, early mornings, weekend hours. He said yes to everything, not because he wanted more, but because saying no felt dangerous. To the people inside those walls, he blended into the background. They learned the sound of his cart, but never his voice. They noticed clean floors, never the man who scrubbed them. In meetings, they talked about growth, ambition, and potential. Words that floated above Daniel's head like a language he was never taught. He watched them through glass walls, suits pressed, laughter easy. They spoke about promotions the way others spoke about weather. Inevitable, expected. No one ever spoke about him. At lunch, they sat together. Daniel ate alone, usually standing, usually quickly. Not because anyone told him to, but because taking space felt like crossing a line. Sometimes, someone would thank him, not looking at him. Already walking away, it wasn't cruelty. It was worse than that. It was indifference. From the outside, there was no sign of a turning point, no hidden talent waiting to be discovered, no mentor watching quietly from afar. Just a man mopping floors while the world moved forward without him. And yet something inside Daniel refused to disappear. It wasn't hope. It wasn't confidence. It was something quieter. A habit. He arrived early. Every day. He fixed things before they broke. Light bulbs, door hinges, loose tiles. Not because he was asked, but because disorder made him uneasy. At night, when the building emptied, he walked the halls slowly, listening, learning the rhythms of the place. Which doors stuck, which alarms glitched, which offices stayed lit long after everyone else had gone home. He remembered everything, even though no one remembered him. The first real fracture came quietly. A maintenance error, a flooded restroom on the executive floor. The blame traveled downward fast. Daniel stood there while a supervisor spoke loudly, sharply, with an audience. Mistakes were listed, assumptions made. He didn't interrupt, didn't defend himself. He cleaned the mess while the supervisor walked away, already done with him. That night, alone in the supply room, Daniel sat on a crate longer than usual. His hands shook, just a little, not from anger, from exhaustion. For the first time, the thought crept in. Maybe this is all there is. Years passed, not dramatically, not noticeably. They passed in small repetitions, same routes, same tasks, same silence. Daniel aged without milestones, no celebrations, no announcements. Just time, stacking quietly on his shoulders. People came and went. Young interns arrived, stayed a year, left with confidence and LinkedIn updates. Managers rotated, executives changed. Daniel remained. And somewhere along the way, the building began to rely on him more than anyone realized. When systems failed at night, They called security. Security called Daniel. When alarms malfunctioned, IT shrugged. Daniel figured it out. He never took credit, never corrected assumptions. It wasn't humility. It was survival. Then came the night that nearly broke him. A power outage. Emergency lights flickering. Voices raised in panic. Daniel moved instinctively, guiding people, resetting systems, opening locked exits. By morning, the crisis was over. By afternoon, someone else received praise. Daniel watched from the side, hands still dirty, body heavy, as applause filled the room again. That was the moment he stood very still. Not defeated, not angry, just clear. Something inside him settled. He didn't quit. He didn't complain. He made a choice no one noticed. From that day forward, he would keep going. Not for recognition. Not for escape. But because stopping would mean becoming exactly what they already believed he was. The building didn't change, but Daniel did, not in ways anyone could see. He stopped rushing through his work. He became precise, methodical, every task done once, done right. Supervisors noticed something, but never enough to ask questions. "He's reliable," they said. The word sounded like a ceiling, not a compliment. Reliability meant permanence, and permanence meant invisibility. As months turned into years, Daniel learned something unsettling. The more indispensable he became, the less replaceable they believed he was. And the less replaceable he seemed, the less they imagined him anywhere else. People joked around him now, not with him. "Careful," someone laughed one afternoon. "If Daniel leaves, the place collapses." They laughed harder. Daniel smiled politely. Inside, something tightened. The judgment grew subtle, then sharp. When new hires arrived, they were introduced with enthusiasm. Daniel was introduced with a gesture. That's maintenance. No name, no history. Sometimes younger employees corrected him, told him how things worked, explained systems he had quietly kept alive for years. He listened, nodded. Correcting them would only expose how much he knew, and knowledge, in his position, made people uncomfortable. The breaking point didn't come from strangers. It came from someone who once mattered, a former colleague, someone Daniel had worked beside long before the building became his whole world. They ran into each other near the elevators. "Daniel?" the man said, squinting. Then recognition, surprise, then confusion. "You're still here?" The pause hurt more than the words. "Yeah," Daniel replied softly. The man shifted, awkward. "Well, good for you. Stability, right?" They shook hands. The elevator doors closed. Daniel stood alone in the reflection of the metal walls, staring at a version of himself he didn't recognize. That night, he stayed later than usual. The halls were silent. The lights dimmed automatically as he passed. He sat on the floor of the mechanical room, back against cold concrete, listening to the hum of machines that depended on him. For the first time in years, doubt spoke loudly. What if this silence isn't strength? What if it's just fear wearing patience as a disguise? Days later, the supervisor called him in. Budget cuts, restructuring, efficiency, words stacked neatly, carefully avoiding emotion. "We may need to adjust your hours," the supervisor said. "Nothing personal, just business." Daniel nodded. He walked out with a schedule that barely covered rent. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat at his small kitchen table, staring at numbers that refused to work together. The silence felt heavier now. Not peaceful, threatening. For the first time, he considered stopping, walking away, letting the building find out what it meant to lose him. But the thought passed. Daniel wasn't wired for dramatic exits. Instead, he did something else. He started writing things down. Every system flaw he had fixed. Every workaround he had built quietly over the years. Every night he had been the only reason the building kept running. Not to prove anything. Not yet. Just to see it himself. The pages filled faster than he expected. Years of unseen work, stacked neatly, Documented at last. Still, nothing changed on the surface. People continued to overlook him. Meetings went on without him. Decisions were made above his head. Then came the incident. A malfunction no one predicted. A cascade of failures that spread faster than protocols. Alarms blared. Phones rang. Panic moved quicker than logic. Daniel was already moving. He didn't wait for instructions, didn't ask permission. He shut down what needed shutting down, redirected what could be saved, prevented what would have become irreversible. By the time daylight returned, the crisis had been contained. Exhausted, Daniel leaned against a wall, breathing slowly. For a moment, someone looked at him differently. Just for a moment. Then the moment passed. In the following days, tension filled the building. Investigations, reports, blame. Daniel was called in again. This time, the tone was colder. "Why did you act without authorization?" the supervisor asked. Daniel opened his mouth, closed it. He explained calmly, factually. The room remained unmoved. Protocol mattered more than outcome. He left knowing something had shifted. Not outward, inward. The silence no longer felt protective. It felt like a choice that demanded a cost. That night, Daniel made another decision. Not to speak louder, not to demand recognition, but to prepare. Quietly, deliberately. Whatever came next, he would not be caught unready. The call came on an ordinary morning. No urgency in the tone, no warning in the words. "Daniel, can you come upstairs for a moment?" He wiped his hands on his uniform and nodded, even though no one could see him. The conference room felt different this time. Quieter, tighter. Faces he rarely saw up close were seated around the table. Executives, consultants, someone from outside. A screen glowed at the front of the room. The building was in trouble. Systems aging, costs rising, risks multiplying. They spoke in careful language, but the truth slipped through the cracks. They didn't fully understand the place they ran. Someone clicked to the next slide. A diagram appeared. Complex, messy, incomplete. A consultant frowned. "We're missing operational continuity," he said. "No one seems to know how this building actually functions day to day." Silence followed. Then, almost as an afterthought, someone spoke. "The caretaker might." Daniel felt the weight of eyes turn toward him. He hesitated, not from fear, from habit. Then he stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice, didn't clear his throat dramatically. He spoke the way he always had, calm, precise, quiet. He pointed out errors in the diagram, explained why certain systems couldn't be disconnected, described sequences no manual contained. As he spoke, the room changed. Questions replaced assumptions. Pens paused. People leaned forward. Someone interrupted him. "How do you know all this?" Daniel paused. "Because I've been here," he said. "Every night, for years." He opened his notebook. Page after page. Dates, fixes, failures prevented, solutions improvised when no one else was around. The silence that followed was different from the ones he knew. This one listened. They asked him to stay, then to sit, then to explain more. By the end of the meeting, the screen no longer showed confusion. It showed his work. Days passed. Whispers followed him now, not behind his back, ahead of him. People greeted him by name, asked questions, waited for answers. A role was created, not announced publicly, just placed in front of him. Operational lead, internal systems coordinator. The title felt strange in his mouth. So did the raise, the office, the chair that belonged to him. But what changed most wasn't how others saw him. It was how he stood. The building still woke before dawn, still slept late. Daniel still arrived early. Not because he had to, because it was who he was. Weeks later, he crossed paths with the same supervisor who once blamed him publicly. The man hesitated. "Daniel, he said. I didn't realize. Daniel nodded once. I know. That was enough. There was no apology scene, no speech, no applause. Just a quiet understanding. Years of silence had not been wasted. They had been invested. Daniel never became loud, never became proud. He became undeniable. And that was the difference. Some strength doesn't announce itself. It waits. It works. It endures. Until one day the world has no choice but to notice what it can no longer function without.